Welcome back.
everybody, welcome back.
Welcome everybody to season 4 of Wealthy Wednesdays. We are going strong this season, all about taking care of our mental health, post pandemic care, really processing and releasing these last few years that have been kind of interesting for sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Monica Matthews. I am the owner of Queen Care, CEO and founder of Life Enrichment Group.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tajiana Ellis, and I am the Chief Program Officer with the Life Enrichment Group.
And if you don't know about Queen Care, our tagline is to indulge, engage, and uplift. We want people to indulge in self care practices that really support optimal health. We want people to engage with one another, and we want to uplift those who are most vulnerable amongst us. And all of our work that we do in the community and abroad is all about that. So, Wealthy Wednesdays, what is it all about? I'm glad that you're here and tuned in. If you're tuned in live or tuning in later, Wealthy Wednesday is really an online health initiative that's focused on learning and relearning how to properly care for ourselves. Okay, we envision this time together to consist of sharing information, like wealthy information, that's going to feed our mind, body, and soul, and cultivate our lives to really exude wealth, because we know that wealth is not just financial, right? Wealth takes place on the mental level, on the soul level, and on the physical level as well. Okay, so I'm so glad that you guys said yes to yourself. We're saying yes to ourselves today and indulging in this self-care practice that really supports our ultimate optimal health. So yeah, Taji, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
All right. Well, listen, we're glad that you all said yes to tuning in tonight. Whether you are live or will watch later, there are so many ways you can stay connected with us. This show is one of them, but other ways you can stay connected with us is to make sure you like, comment, and share this video. Follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, you have to visit www.queencareproducts.com. So before we get into it, yes, you have to do all those things. So before we get into it, if you missed the last few weeks, here's a recap. So we've been joined by our resident therapist. We have Dr. Jen. We've been processing pandemic realities in an effort to really release and establish or reestablish post-pandemic care rituals for ourselves. We are doing this so that simply we can perform at our highest level. A little disclaimer is that these topics that we've been covering have been personal, including tonight's topic of relationships, and sensitive, and it also could be triggering. So we're just advising to please take notice of your mental, check in with your mental and emotional state, and govern yourself accordingly. We were very intentional on wanting to discuss these topics because having a healthy mind state is truly the backbone to having a wealthy life. So for those of you who have missed our episode last week on grief and loss, Dr. Jen gave us a wealth of care points for us to implement and combat when we experience grief and loss.
I love it. I love it. And I love that like we were super intentional about really focusing on mental health, because let's just be real, it's like this taboo thing, but we are really working hard to just normalize like talking about mental health, right? Like, and just exposing us to like the therapists that are here today and just other professionals that can help us, walk through this thing called mental health. Like, what is it? Like, how do we navigate this? And so I'm really I've learned so much since this season alone, and I'm looking forward to tonight's topic on relationships. And y'all, we're not just talking about romantic relationships, we're talking about professional relationships, friendships, anything with a ship at the end. Yeah, we're talking about it tonight.
Absolutely.
So yes, so today this dialogue that we're going to have is with the region's top therapist. Okay. And this topic really, relationships is really heavy in nature. Like it could get real heavy. But even more heavy when we really don't have the tools to process through, emotions that can come up, feelings that can come up when in relationships. But first, there's something else that we got to do first.
Yes, as always, we have our question of the day. So today is no different. So, you all, today's question of the day is, how do you know if you're pouring from an empty cup versus a full cup? I'm going to say that again. How do you know if you're pouring from an empty cup versus a full cup? Right? It's pretty deep. It's kind of deep tonight. I'm not going to lie to you.
We're going deep tonight. Oh my gosh.
Monica, did you want to share anything?
I'll answer the question today. Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to encourage everybody that's watching too to engage with us. Answer the question today. What does it look like for me to pour from an empty cup? I would say super short. I'm always pretty like this, but if I'm pouring from an empty cup, I don't want to hear anything extra. I just want to hear yes, no. Period. Very short, short to the point. It might cut you off. I probably I'm not going to want to hear a lot about what you may have to say. I mean, it gets pretty selfish when I'm pouring from an empty cup, and it makes sense because I'm barely have anything for myself. So that's me in an empty cup. And I think it's important that we really analyze, listen, when are we pouring, knowing okay, my meter is getting low, y'all.
Yeah.
We gotta know that about ourselves so that we can do what we need to do to fill our cup up. What about you? How do you know?
Yeah, I think I know if I'm pouring from an empty cup. Very similar. I can just tell by my energy in terms of my mood. It's just, I feel I could be more on edge, more irritable, more less patience than I normally would have. For those of you know, I'm pretty carefree, go with the flow type person. But if I'm pouring from an empty cup, I'm very I don't have a lot of tolerance. I don't have a lot of tolerance or a lot of I would say tolerance, patience. I can tell, and that's when I can tell, because I can feel something rising up in me with things that normally would not bother me at all. That they bother me. So then I know I'm okay, Taji, you might need to get, did you get enough sleep? Did you eat? Did you drink your water? Did you exercise? What things are you neglecting? And now showing up, with friendships, is showing up at work, is showing up, you know what I mean? So
yes, I do. And that self-analyzation is key. It really is key. I mean, when we're talking about mental health, we're not talking about, I'm not talking about mental health, your mental health or somebody else's mental health. I'm talking about me. And so I think that doing just a little self-check, I think that's a great question of the day, to just check ourselves.
Check ourselves before you wreck yourself.
Wreck yourself.
I mean, they said it right. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. If you're just now tuning in, I see some people just tuned in. Feel free to answer this question as we get into the rest of this episode, because we have some guests and we want to make sure we get to that. But yes, how do you know if you're pouring from an empty cup versus a full cup? We also pinned it in our comment section. So go ahead and answer that. While you're answering that, we have some exciting guests with us today. So, and we got some bios, because what do you know? We're going to hype up these women tonight. Okay.
Absolutely.
Because
these are some bosses. Hold on.
Let's some bosses. These are some, it takes a such person to go through the schooling and the education and the research and all the things that they have done. We're reading bios today, period. So That's it. That's all. So we are so excited to bring back our licensed psychologist that's been with us this whole season, unpacking the pandemic with us. So we're definitely welcoming back Dr. Genesee Temple, also aka Dr. Jen, is a licensed psychologist that is passionate about supporting others and improving community well-being. Dr. Jen is a licensed, Dr. Jen has obtained her bachelor's degree in psychology from Eastern Washington University and her doctorate in counseling psychology from Washington State University. She has worked within higher education in the private sector throughout her career and has translated her skills into teaching, workshop facilitation, consultation work, and executive coaching. Dr. Temple has been actively engaged in EDI work for several years and has the opportunity to work with others across the globe to engage in this challenging but meaningful work. Dr. Temple describes herself as a genuine and humorous person that enjoys traveling, spending time with family and friends, and watching sports, especially college football. Okay, Dr. Jen, we love to see that. And we also, so Dr. Jen's been with us. That's her bio. So you see she's accomplished. And so we also have another special guest that's joining us for the first time today, Dr. Ashley McGirt-Adair, who is the founder and president of Washington Therapy Fund. She is a psychotherapist, TEDx international speaker, author, featured in Forbes, MSNBC, Young Turks, OWN, Bravo, and more. Come on, girl. Ashley has received a master's in social work from the University of Washington. Go Huskies. She also holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. Ashley currently owns and operates her own private practice. In her private practice, she focuses primarily on racial trauma, depression, and anxiety. Ashley actively works toward destigmatizing mental illness and reducing high rates of recidivism in American prisons in an attempt to create a more socially just society for all. Ashley offers presentations, workshops, group facilitation, and consultation, specializing in racial trauma, mental health, crisis response, social justice, and racial equity. Ashley strives to help others find happiness and healing within themselves through unpacking their baggage, resting, reflecting, and restoring themselves to be whom they were intended to be on this earth. To her peers, Ashley is most known as a world traveler. Throughout Ashley's extensive world travel, she has the privilege of working with a wide variety of individuals and families from different cultures with different backgrounds, as well as from varied age ranges. Ashley believes in incorporating the multicultural experience into practice as it plays such an immense role in one's overall development and some of the traumas to which many people of color have become exposed. Due to Ashley's extensive travels and lived experiences, she was compelled to write I Tried to Travel Away, Mental Health Tips for Travelers. Her book is also the theme for one of the most sought out workshops on self-care and travel. Y'all, we have the best of the best. We have the best of the best on tonight.
Yes.
And so without further ado, we are going to bring Dr. Ashley McGirt-Adair and Dr. Genesee Temple into the room.
Woohoo! Welcome, welcome.
Hey, welcome. Yes.
Thank you all so much for being here today, Dr. Ashley, Dr. Jen. I really do appreciate you all taking a moment out of your so busy careers and days to be here and have this really important conversation with us tonight, all about relationships. And we know relationships can get ill. Relationships can get ill, but we have two of the region's top accomplished therapists. So those of you all that are tuning in, get your questions ready. Get what you need, because listen, I'm gonna tell you for a fact, one of these therapists, if not both of them on the line, well, one of them, you can't even get an appointment with her. Okay. So you might as well take advantage of today, but I really appreciate you all being here today. So let's just hop right into this conversation. Again, tonight we're talking about relationships, whether it's, romantic or platonic or, professional, relationships. We're human. So we're all, integrating with each other, and everything's not always going to be peachy keen. And so let's talk about it. What's a toxic relationship? I'm gonna just throw this first. I'm gonna throw some questions out to you, and if the online audience has some questions too, we're gonna go for it. What is a toxic relationship? Because we got to define some of this stuff, because let me tell you, some of us are in relationships and they're toxic and we don't even know it. Some of us know that it's toxic because, now, especially since the pandemic, it's this buzzword, oh, we're in these toxic relationships and this and that. But what really is a toxic relationship? I'll pose it to you, Dr. Jen. You can start, and Dr. Ashley can follow up.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate you naming too that on social media, like it's a buzzword. I think we've been talking about like things, words that we use that may not fully encapsulate what's going on. And I think first and foremost, just because someone does something you don't like doesn't make them toxic. It's not an automatic qualifier. So I think first and foremost is really understand what do you value in a relationship? A lot of us consciously or subconsciously work from values. Do we value trust? Do we value safety? Do we value connection, community? And so when you think about the different relationships that you're in, how closely do they align with your values or not? When you're engaging with those people that you're in relationship with, do you feel like you are able to be your full self? Do you feel like you're able to thrive? Do you feel like you're able to show up? Or do you feel like you have to walk on eggshells, or that you're not valued? Undermine, etc. So I think first is like, really thinking about those values and then defining what is toxicity to you. What are your red flags, yellow flags that alert you that maybe this relationship isn't in a healthy place? Because sometimes relationships can go through periods of toxicity, but it doesn't mean the whole relationship is rotten. It just means there might be something you need to attune to so that you and that person can try to work through it. As humans, conflict is inevitable. Relationships ebb and flow. So kind of normalizing that. And then I would say one of the big things to watch out for is emotional, physical, or psychological abuse. Those are very big red flags, regardless of the context. So we think about emotional abuse. We're talking about people who use emotions to manipulate or punish you. Oh, if you leave me, this is going to happen and I'm going to hurt myself, or, paying attention to that. Physical speaks for itself. Are you being physically harmed, restrained, etc.? And then psychological, you can really think of gaslighting. It's making you question, did I experience that? Is that right? Maybe it's me. So those are just some of the things I would say to kind of think about as you're defining and for yourself what a toxic relationship is or can be.
That's a good foundation. Dr. Ashley, you want to add to that?
Yes. First, let me say I really love y'all ladies. And one thing Monica gonna do is really hype somebody up. But I just want to clarify, I'm actually not a doctor yet. I am working on my PhD, but I'm a master's level clinician. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that up front. But thank you. I appreciate the doctor title already, because we
in my eyes. Listen, we speaking
it into existence. Come on,
we're speaking it into existence. But I'm like, I just want to clarify that right there. But man, what else can I really add? I would say honestly, a toxic relationship is anything that threatens you and that threatens your well-being in some way. Psychologically, physically. Where you feel misunderstood, you may be demeaned, they don't respect your boundaries. I know the term gaslighting was thrown out there. I do think with the way that social media is set up, a lot of these words are misused and overused. So we really have to understand the way in which we're utilizing them, especially things like boundaries, because we oftentimes set a boundary, but it's really a rule and it's not a boundary. So we got to be clear. Are we making rules or are we actually setting boundaries? But I would say a relationship that doesn't respect your actual boundaries and harms you physically, mentally, emotionally, whether it's platonic, intimate, friendship, familial relationships, they can be toxic in so many different ways. And the body knows. How do you feel when you get around certain individuals? That's a sign right there that an individual may be toxic for you. Do you feel exhausted? Do you feel stressed out? Energy is so powerful, and you'll know when you get around some individuals, or when you know you're on your way and you're like, oh, okay, already like huffing and puffing. So then you got to sit back and assess, why did my body just do that? Why did I just sigh? What is it about going to this individual or being around this individual that is causing my body to respond in some specific way. But Dr. Ginn really covered everything, but I would just, add some of those things as to what a toxic relationship can be and how we can really define it. But yeah, just really look at your body and how your body's responding, your emotional needs, your physical needs. What does respect look like in that relationship? Is respect not being honored? How is communication going in that relationship? How are you honoring each other in the relationship?
That's really good. And I want to like drill down a little bit on the boundary thing. And I'm just really speaking from my own experience with this. Like, I'm being super vulnerable now. Like, I feel like, I was in a relationship for almost 25 years. And when the pandemic hit, I decided to end the relationship because, the pandemic came and I slowed down to a stop. It was actually a blessing in disguise, have been trying to get out of this relationship, several times. And when you said boundary, I'm thinking to myself, I was like, I really didn't have any boundaries with this individual. It was just kind of like whatever this individual wanted, I would do because I feel like I was doing things for love or doing things to be accepted or just doing things to be like that type of thing. And so I'm just trying to think like, where did I miss the mark on boundaries? Like, you know what I mean? Where are boundaries? Where do we learn how to establish boundaries and like, how do we establish those? Because I really see that as being a big deal when we're talking about relationships, especially when they go south, right? So how are we supposed to look at this thing called boundaries? Because then you also said something about like, is it a boundary or is it a rule? Like, what are boundaries?
Yeah, so boundaries are really restrictions that you place for yourself to keep others from harming, versus a rule is a restriction that you put on another person. So you're going to say, telling someone, hey, you cannot go and date other people. Like, that's a rule that you're establishing, versus I don't want to be with someone who's going to be in a relationship with other individuals because I value monogamous relationships and that's something that is of value to me. So see the difference there, where you're telling someone what they cannot do versus you're saying, hey, this is something that I value in my life, so I'm not going to be in an individual. But you can't control someone and say, hey, don't do X, Y, and Z. But you can definitely set out your values and the norms. But to tell someone, what they can and cannot do, that's when you start placing rules and restrictions. But you can definitely set up and establish how you want to be treated. And how do we learn that? Well, we learn that from our upbringing, and most people don't learn that because the reality is the people who raised us, oftentimes they didn't know how to set boundaries themselves, and then it becomes generational. And we learned, what mom and aunties did and uncles, and we've seen the poor boundaries that they set for themselves. Sometimes it's through TV, sometimes it's through social media. That's where a lot of people are even beginning to know what a boundary is, through the power of social media and clinicians and just the influx of individuals who are putting out relevant content. So it's like I always say, social media is a double-edged sword, because it can definitely be used for positive things or for harm. But, it's learning how to communicate, learning your needs. Oftentimes we don't know what we need, but our body does. I'm really big on somatics and just how the body responds to individuals, to everything. And if you look at that, then you will know, hey, my body's not responding well to that. Maybe that's not an environment or an individual that I should be around, or that's something that doesn't necessarily feel good, or it does feel good, but what is it costing me to experience that pleasure?
Or pain, because you could be it could not all be pleasurable what you're experiencing. And that part is, Dr. Ginn, that's interesting to me because like these red flags pile up, right? We don't have, the boundaries in place, which, the more I am normalizing mental health and the importance of it in my life personally, it all is breaking down to like, knowing myself. Like you say, like you need to know your values to even be able to put a boundary in place. You need to know who you are or what you like and what you don't like. And I feel like in society, just in general, like all of us are, on this TV, on this social media, like trying to be everybody else except for ourselves. Like we don't even know who we are. You know what I mean? And then don't add on like, the generational stuff or the cultural, stuff that's, passed down with us too. But like, Dr. Jen, like what makes us stay in these toxins? Because I couldn't understand, like, after 20, that was my whole, from teenager up until my 40s, that was my whole entire life. Like, and yeah, there were times where I wanted to, leave a lot of different times. And I did leave a lot of different times and came back too. What makes us see those red flags and still stay?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, for each of us, we have our different reasons. But I always say one thing humans are really good at is rationalizing things. We create, these narratives that help support our decision. I think another piece is fear of the unknown, right? Like what will life be without this person? And so I think that can really get in the way of us making choices that would support our well-being. Familiarity. So, this is all you've known, right? What information do you have to base that like the next relationship will be good? Sometimes age. Some of us, as we age and get older, I hear this all the time, like, I'm too old to start over. It's too much, so just feeling really helpless and then creating a place where you're stuck. Not that you are stuck, you choose to be stuck. And so I think really taking a step back and sitting with those fears, sitting with those things that are coming up and being honest about it is one of the ways that you can help yourself get unstuck, right? Like, what am I afraid of? Because it's really based in fear. It's based in anxiety. It's wanting to control the outcome, because if you disengage from that relationship, you don't know the outcome. I think another part of it too is like, how much do we base our self-worth, our self-esteem into the relationship or our happiness, right? Like, without this thing, I won't be who I thought I was, or I'm going to be less than. This is why I always get on people when they say like, you complete me. It's like, no. You're two whole people who are choosing to be two wholes together. And if one whole moves away, your slices don't go away. No parts of you leave. But I think it's then that points to some other inner healing, inner work that you need to do to recognize that you're the full shebang. And sitting with like breakups and separations and all those things are painful. They're supposed to be painful. And so if the pain is what's stopping us, it kind of goes back to that remembering of like, when I read some of the Buddhist stuff I'm into, it's kind of just like pain and suffering is inevitable, but it's the alleviation of suffering that makes life worth living. Right. And so it's kind of like, yeah, breakups do suck and it's going to suck for a little bit, but then I'm going to find other reasons to find joy. Let's move forward.
Yes, I like that. And I think really this whole season of Wealthy Wednesday, this whole season 4, Dr. Jen, you've really been driving home the point about making a choice. You know what I mean? And like, choose to that you're going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, no matter like what happened, just choose that. And I really, that's helped me a lot. I just want to let you know that because, what do they say? A no decision is I can't remember the little cliche little saying or whatever, but when you don't make a decision about something, basically you are making a decision that you're going to stay in this and you're going to wallow in this and, do all, just stay there or whatever. So yeah, I appreciate that too. And I also, am thinking about, knowing yourself. Yes. But like the toll that it takes on you every single day when you're ignoring all these red flags, like now I tell young ladies, listen, you see a red flag in the beginning, honey, listen, like pay attention to that. You might want to say no to that because the next thing you know, it'll be all this time later and you'll be caught up. But Ashley, you said something really interesting that I believe a lot in, and that is how the body is taking score. Right? When you're going through this mental abuse, this emotional abuse, this physical abuse, even, and how, it's just interesting to me that the toll that we're taking, that we can pass it down to our children and our temperament and things like that. Ashley, talk a little bit about like your body keeping score. Like you talked about like, you know, how you feel about when you come around a person, but I know we store trauma in the body, and we've talked about this a little bit before too. Like, you know, what is that about? Is that just like our mind body connection, or is that just like a defense mechanism?
All of the above, a mind, body, soul, all of that. It's all interconnected. Physical health, mental health, they are one and the same. And when our mental health is off, our physical health is off, and vice versa. And what we don't really realize is that when we're stressed out, it literally impacts our body in ways that is killing us, especially as people of color. So many of us are impacted by chronic stress related illnesses, and we're dying at disproportionate rates as opposed to our white counterparts who are having longer lives, unopposed to us. But we're also dealing with things like racial trauma, systemic oppression, all of these things that impact our body and our health. And when we're talking about relationships and healthy behavior, red flags, the reality is that it has really been normalized, unhealthy behavior and red flags, to the point that so many of us don't know that it's unhealthy because we've seen others going through those things, and they, you know, we thought they just persevered and they were resilient, and all of these things that we say, or we praise people for being in 30, 40, 50-year-old abusive relationships. And we don't acknowledge that that was unhealthy. They didn't sleep in the same rooms. They didn't talk to one another. They didn't communicate. But hey, they were married for 50 plus years. So we're going to celebrate that. And so we don't know the inner workings of that relationship, and maybe the physical abuse, the emotional abuse that individuals actually endured. And so, you know, there's this unsurmounted amount of pressure for us to stay in relationships from our family, our peers, from society. We don't want to appear like a failure or whatever the case may be. And sometimes we feel like we're responsible for our partner in ways that, well, you know, maybe if I just do this differently, or if I just wait for them to change. And this is why you see so many people stay in these abusive relationships, and they don't necessarily recognize that their body is actually breaking down, and that they're having all of these different illnesses or things that are going on with their body until it's too late.
That is so deep. That's a whole nother show, like talking about that trauma and stuff like that. Because I was like, you know, in a relationship with, you know, an African American male, and we going at it all the time. Like, it's like, why we're tearing each other down even more, and then we have to go outside of the home and get beat down some more. It's like, why? Like, you know, like, let's not do that. But I think the underlying thing too with all of this is fear. Like Dr. Jen talked about it, like, you know, scared of the fear of the unknown. Like, what's on the other side if I let my bestie go of 20 years, but they're super toxic, you know what I mean? Or what's on the other side of this romantic relationship that I'm gonna let go, you know? And I think personally for me, fear definitely was a big thing. And it wasn't like fear of the unknown. It was fear of what, you know, what is he gonna do? You know, what is he gonna do? You know what I mean? And I just had to like take control of that and be like, this is my life. You know what I mean? So whatever, it's whatever, you know? So yeah, thank you for that. And I just want to throw this in there too, because this is like another buzzword like these days when you're talking about relationships and stuff, like narcissism. Like, can we get a good working definition of narcissism? Because I was talking to someone, and they're like, oh yeah, so-and-so is a narcissist. I'm like, what does that even mean? Do you know what that means? And I'm talking about just Google, you know, in narcissist abuse though, like in relationships, like that's a real thing, you know what I mean? And I know that there are a lot of people that are trapped in those type of situations, you know what I mean? And so like what is a narcissist, and you know, narcissist abuse, and like what would you say, you know, how to get out of it? Either one of you can take a crack at it. One of y'all like, oh, you do.
Okay, so you said what is narcissist abuse? So this is definitely one of the most overused terms, and the reality is because so many of us actually carry traits of narcissism, not as it actually applies to the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of how we actually diagnose mental disorders in the field. There's a really amazing book called The Narcissist You Know. I always encourage everyone to read it, and they break down different celebrities who we all know. You don't necessarily know who it is in the beginning, and they tell a story, and then it all shapes out to be that they're actually a narcissist. And then it's actually the author who's one of the biggest narcissists. He's a psychologist who wrote it, and he basically shows how all of us carry traits, and that is why now there is this big thing where everyone's calling one another a narcissist, but it doesn't necessarily meet the DSM diagnosis. But what we know of a narcissist is someone who has an unreasonably high sense of their own self-importance. They talk about themselves a lot, sense of grandeur, all of these different things. So I can go down the whole DSM-5 diagnosis, but when it comes to actual relationships and abuse, it's when someone in the relationship thinks so highly of themselves that they put the other person in the relationship in harm because they value themselves more than they value the other person in that relationship, and it harms them emotionally, physically, and so in a plethora of ways. That person is always having to cater to them. The conversation is always about them, even in times, intense moments when that person should be having a moment for themselves. Maybe a family member died and they're like, well, hey, well, you know what? My grandmother died too. Yeah, that was 20 years ago. And not to downplay or dismiss the death of your grandmother, but this is like immediate. It's about me right now. But they'll find some way to make the conversation be about themselves, and to where the other person feels like they cannot speak up. And that is emotional abuse, what it really is. And it's extremely harmful. But as I was saying, it can be very difficult to pinpoint just because the way the word is being thrown out, and really at all times, you was just hyping us up. We all want to hype ourselves, encourage ourselves, as we should. Yes. But the thing is, are we doing that at a point to where it's harming someone else? And that's where it differentiates and where it becomes extremely harmful. And that's how we know like who's actually a narcissist. But to what level are they a narcissist? Is it the DSM level, or is it like in the book? Gosh, I can't even remember, but it's just like different levels. And this is one psychologist who wrote this, and it's just like we all are, really, if you think about it. And when you read the book, it's so I love it. And there's like a quiz, and it asks you all these questions, and it's really everybody, but not to the level of the DSM. And again, it's, are you harming others? Are you taking control of the situation? Is it always about you to a toxic level to where other people can't show up? They don't feel like they can have a voice in the conversation. They feel small around you. Are you always making yourself big? Can you listen? Can you receive information? Or is it the latter?
That is so good. Like, this is, y'all, listen, this is, people pay hundreds of dollars per hour for this type of information. Like, this is so good, and I'm so appreciative of this information. I know it's helping me. I'm sure it's helping a lot of people out there. How do we get out of these toxic relationships? Like, how do we get out of them? It's what are we in 2023? We're post-pandemic. Like I said, the pandemic really helped me stop, drop, and roll on all of that stuff, because I'm like, wait a minute, this is like, we're moving into the new normal. This is the perfect time to really be done with this, and so like, how do we get out of it? How do people get out of it?
I think the most important thing is having a strong support system. Having a tribe of individuals who you can lean on, who are going to support you when you leave that relationship. Because oftentimes we stay in toxic, abusive relationships because we feel like that's the only person there. And they isolate us. They isolate us from our family and our friends, and they're very strategic in the way that they do that. So we have to break away from that and build a strong support system. And then cut off contact. because individuals are really manipulative, and they will have ways to pull us back in and draw us back in, or dangle that shiny new thing to get us to come back. So really just cut off contact, change your number, delete their phone number, do whatever you need to do, unfollow them on social media, reach out to a licensed clinician who you can speak to, someone who you can talk to with a non-biased perspective, who doesn't know the other individual, and that can help you work through that situation. I think having a detailed plan as well. How are you going to leave out of this situation, especially when maybe there's kids involved or finances involved? Actually writing out a plan of action of what you're going to go, who you're going to talk to. These are the people, these are the key things that I need. Write it out.
That's good. That's real good. Those are really good tips. Dr. Jen, you want to add to that? Like how can not just get out of it, but how can we heal? I'll ask you that. Like, okay, how can we start healing from this? Because listen, after 25 something years of abuse, like just abuse and just of toxicity and everything, I found a couple things. Number one, I found that I don't even know who I am. Like this whole thing right now, it's a journey. It's just know, because you get lost in the other person. Like, you know what I mean? And to where like I got so lost that I didn't even know what my favorite color was. Like, you know what I mean? Lost. And so, now on the other side of the healing is all about me, and not in a selfish narcissist way, but it's like, I want to learn who I am, what I like, those type of things that I did not get a chance to do. But like, what are some other ways to like heal from it? Because even physically, like I know that my body's been keeping score over these decades, with trauma in my body and different things going on. Even my attitudes about different things, I'm triggered by different things that might not even have anything to do with him, but if it reminds me of him, or if it's manipulative in any type of way that reminds me of that, I'll cut it off. You know what I mean? Because it just, it triggers me. So like, how do we start healing from, once we get out of this relationship?
Yeah. And you were already starting to kind of touch on some of the things I was thinking about. First, I think it's very helpful to know your triggers, start to recognize them. What are the situations, people, places, contexts that bring up that discomfort in your body, right? How do you know when it's coming up? Are you starting to feel your heart race, your stomach drop, sweating, palms, or what's happening in those moments? So I think we talked about it in the last session that we all just like chatted, but remember the ACE, right? Anchoring ourselves. And so when we are feeling triggered, first let's acknowledge what's going on, what's coming up. Okay, I'm feeling flustered. Something's happening internally. I'm feeling these physiological things. Okay, let me connect back to my body. Let me do my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or my other grounding exercise. Let me remove myself, and then let me re-engage with what's going on. Where am I right now? Okay, I'm outside. I was on my way to the store. Let me re-engage in this activity. And that's how we, bring ourselves out of acting out of the trigger. It is not to say that some triggers may never go away. Our brain doesn't forget. That's not what brains do. They don't typically dump. They may suppress, repress, etc., push it deep down, but our brains don't forget. And so the goal isn't necessarily to never feel triggered, but the goal is to decrease the intensity of the trigger over time. So that's when we go back to that ACE skill. I think another piece that you were starting to touch on is like when you didn't know yourself is reconnect to your values, right? We started this conversation talking about values. What do you value? Your own personal values in relationships, at work, etc. What are the things that you want to reconnect with? And maybe your values have shifted. If it's been a while since you've been in contact with your inner self, what do I value now at this point in my life? What are some of the behaviors, activities, resources that can help me enact some of those values on a daily basis? This is how you start to come back into yourself and get back to being that whole. Well, you're always whole, but get back to feeling like you're that whole piece. So that's another piece of it. And then I think reflect on what you learned from the relationship. I always say there's learning in life. I'm a lifelong learner. Everything good, bad, or ugly is going to teach me about the world, other people, about myself. There's always something to be gained, even when it's been a complete shit show. So take that lesson. What do you want to carry forward? And what are some things you want to leave behind? And then give yourself time. We talked about grief, right? Grief, we talked about it is not just mourning the deceased in physical body, right? We can grieve relationships. We can even start to grieve a relationship as we know it's time to move away from it. So really be compassionate and give ourselves that space and time to grieve, and make peace with what has happened, or have understanding for it, and then go on to the next thing.
Ooh, make peace with it. That is so good. Make peace with it so you can release it and let it go. Just make peace with it. I love that so much. Thank y'all, ladies. I want to ask you one last piece before y'all get up out of here. And it really is, I would like for you to leave us with some care or healing points, if you will. Like, what care points do you recommend in regards to nurturing a healthy relationship? Because, you know, we've been talking about toxic relationships and stuff like that. You're not going to be in a toxic relationship forever, because we're choosing to move forward. We're choosing to let go and undoing all of that. So moving forward, like, what tips do you all have for, like, you know, really nurturing healthy relationships so we can replace the negative with positive? And this is for both of you all.
Yeah, I would say really just make dedicated time for those who matter to you, and be intentional about it so that you can actually come together and communicate and have healthy conversations about anything that may have gone awry in the relationship. I think oftentimes something happens and then we respond in such a way, or we'll personalize something. I always say the first act of war is personalization. So just, you know, come forward, present this, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I would like. Just be able to communicate your needs, and be honest, be vulnerable, be open. I think that's how we can really nurture those relationships that matter, and make sure that we're really nurturing a relationship that does matter, and that we're not taking the time for somebody that, well, they're only going to serve a season in your life. And really make sure that you can understand and differentiate those who just are there for a season and those who you actually want in your life for a lifetime. And how do you cultivate that relationship? And again, paying attention to your body and your own needs and how you show up. I think that's extremely important. And then having a good self-care practice, because when we are in relationship with others, sometimes we often lose ourselves. So making sure that you schedule time for yourself, and it's all about you unapologetically in a way that isn't harmful to someone else. I see they're cutting the lights off in here, so I gotta wrap it up.
That's all right.
Like the lights just went out.
I'm shutting it down. Dr. Jen, you want to add to that? And then I think we have a couple of questions maybe from viewers, and then
Yeah, I mean, just quickly to piggyback off that, I think continue to know yourself, right? A lot of people say, I lost myself in the relationship. And by continuing to know yourself, you're going to recognize when you're growing and changing, because sometimes we outgrow relationships, or we're growing into a different place in a relationship. And I think having that self-awareness is something that's really important to communicate to your partner. You know, like, maybe this worked for me a decade ago, but now we're 12 years in and it's shifted. So continuing to have dialogue with your partner about who you are, what your needs are, and making space for them as well. And I would say a big piece, I heard this recently at a wedding I was at, was like compromise. Nurturing a healthy relationship takes compromise. It doesn't necessarily always mean you're compromising, but both of you working towards meeting in the middle is a way that you can nurture a healthy relationship.
I love that. I love that. Ashley, I know the places, you know, you shutting it down. We're going to let you go. But before we let you go, Taji, there was a question. What's the name of the book?
What was the name of the book?
It was The Body Keeps Score or something, Ashley. I think it was called
The Narcissism one.
Oh, The Narcissist Is Me.
Oh, you're talking to me. I'm like, wait, what book did I mention? The Narcissist You Know. It's so
The
good.
Narcissist You Know. And I was like, The Narcissist Is Me.
And I really just kind of ruined it for you because it's like at the end, it's all of us. So that's why it's called The Narcissist, you know. But it's really good.
That's okay.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any other questions from?
And it's half off right now since it's Prime Day.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
It's
Prime
half off
Day.
today, y'all. Prime Day.
Okay. No, there's no other questions. Just thank you, Melanie, for your question, and then Sherry said thank you for explaining. This has been helpful.
Yes. Ashley, Dr. Jen, as always, thank you so much. Yes, and we'll drop the link for you all to the book in the comments too. Thank you all so much for giving us your time. We'll see you soon, and we appreciate you so much. And see you next time.
Thank y'all so much.
Oh my goodness! Ooh, that was good, Tashi.
That was so good. Thank you. It's a blessing. Yes, it was.
Absolutely. We have to talk about these things. We have to, and we have to normalize mental health. And like I said earlier, it's all about us to us. Like this is not like a group project or anything like that. It's about us seeing ourselves. Do we have any other comments or anybody answer the question, or are we good?
Nope. We're good.
Yeah, relationships, man. I didn't understand it then when that song was like relationships can get ill, but they really can, like literally get you sick.
Literally. And I think that was like some really good points. Like pay attention to your body, pay attention to your reaction, pay attention to yourself. Basically, just pay attention to yourself. Our body tells us a lot more than we really like. Don't give it credit for because we don't listen. We don't tune in.
That's right. We don't tune in. You know what? And because we put all these distractions ahead.
These distractions.
It's like the world is designed as one big distraction to distract
you from what's really going on.
Yeah, and what's really real too. It's like you're going against the grain in your own life in this society, you know. But if that's what makes us stronger too, right? Exactly. That's what makes us stronger. So, yay, I'm so excited to keep continuing these conversations about that. Having both of them on today was great.
This was so good, you guys. Thank you, everybody who's been tuning in with us. These next few weeks, we're going to keep going. We're going to have Dr. Jen come back as a resident therapist for the season and continue to just really increase our knowledge and our skill set around these topics that can have us carrying weight in our everyday lives, but we have to release these things. So I'm so glad that you tuned in to invest in yourself and invest in, what you need to do for yourself. Yes. With that, we do have some fun things you can do with yourself and for some self-care for our announcements. So we just set off our Queen Care Summer series for this last Sunday. But we still have one more event for the week. So earlier this week, we had Self-Care and Sip on Sunday, Fitness for the Culture on Monday, Do-It-Yourself Arts and Crafts on Tuesday. And on Friday, we have our open mic karaoke night. So if you still come and support and do something fun, get some community, it'll be held at Queen Care Central District, 23rd and Jackson at 7 p.m. And if you missed the other events that I mentioned, they'll be coming back around next month, the second week of August. But again, there's still one more. You guys come through on Friday and share, if you have a talent, you have something you want to bless the mic, you want to share a song. I think last month, Monica was feeling Prince and she thought she was Prince. She thought she was Michael Jackson. I don't know what was going on. But yeah, so you guys can also embody whoever artist you want to be on karaoke. But if you're a poet, a comedian, a singer, a dancer, bring yourself to Friday night. Bless us with some of your talent. And then let's karaoke it out. Also, we have summer offerings. Well, actually, they're closed, but we are doing our summer programs. The Scholars Project for our middle school students we are, we already started last week, so it's going in full effect at the William Gross Center. Super exciting being able to teach our young people about coding and some other technology, AI content that they're learning in middle school. So cool. And then also we have our youth and business program that is in full effect right now. I think we have a couple spots for our young men. So if you have a high school student ages if you have a student from 14 to 24 who is a young man that would want to participate in our youth and business program, we do have a couple spots open for that, and that is a paid internship. So if you want more information, contact us. And then last but not least, if you are in the Renton, Benson Hill area, Family First Community Center has just opened a couple weeks ago, and we have been able to host our programs, Young Queens and Young Kings, on Mondays and Tuesdays, the Young Kings from 12 to 1:30 p.m. And then Mondays and Fridays from 2:30 to 4 is Young Queens. So if you know any students who are in the area or you want to bring your student over there, it's free. It's a really nice community center. There's a lot of things to do, and we are plugged in. So we would love to have you all with us. And I think those are all the announcements. Monica, am I missing anything?
No, you all come on out to our summer series. We really are curating these events really to, create like healthy spaces. We're talking about relationships and, we want to nurture healthy relationships. We're creating these spaces to do that. So come on out.
Come on out. Those are all my announcements. Monica, did you have any final words?
Oh my gosh. Final words for tonight, man, do what's best for you. It's that simple. It's that simple. You don't have to explain to someone else why this is not working. You could if you want to, but you don't have to. You know what I mean? Do what's best for you, because a lot of times we make these decisions based off of, what is so-and-so going to think about me? Or what are they going to feel? Or what is this going to look like? And all of that, forget all of that. Do what's best for you. If it's not working for you, if it's not good for you, if it's not healthy for you, if it's causing you dis-ease or, dysfunction or anything of that, for real, cut it unapologetically too, because sometimes we just feel like, oh my gosh, depending on how close the person is to you, always do what's best for you. And sometimes that may mean that somebody else is not gonna like it, but in the end, you have to, be okay with you, and you're in here with you. So that's my final words for tonight. Always do what's best for you.
Always.
Yes.
I love it.
So with that, you all, thank you all for tuning in to Wealthy Wednesday Season 4. We're here live every other Wednesday. Yep. And you can catch our reruns in between. We have lots and lots of good content. Like I said, this is Season 4, so it's all about mental health. We've had some great topics already. And hey, we'll see y'all next Wealthy Wednesday. Man, listen, keep it wealthy. Ta-ta.
Bye.